of the planning committee at Bracknell Forest. We have quite a long agenda, so we're going to try and be smart about it. We have a couple of visiting members, but the first thing, of course, is apologies for absence, please.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have councillors online?
I can see we've got Councillor Zaharuddin online.
Yes, Chair. Councillor Zaharuddin joining online. Thank you.
Thank you.
You also have Councillor Barnard online, but I'm trying to get on through my laptop. I'm on my phone at the moment.
Okay. Thank you for that.
I can also see Councillor Pennell online.
Lovely. Thank you. She's a visiting member, and we have two visiting members at the back, Councillor Dorothy Hayes and Councillor Catherine Neil. Good Lord. Sorry. Right. Now, the minutes of the last meeting. We need to approve these as a correct record. Has everybody read them, and do you have any questions of accuracy? No? Then may I move that those are a correct record? Do I have a seconder?
Councillor Collins.
Thank you. So all those in favour of those as a correct record? Thank you. Now I have a statement coming from Councillor Virgo concerning what happened in the last meeting.
Chair, thank you very much. I'll be as quick as I can about this. So let me read the whole thing. To the Chair and those present at the Planning Committee held in the hybrid format, both within the Council Chamber and also on Teams on the 12th of September 2024. During my comments concerning the S73, Section 73 application 23/00204/4, land off the yard off Chavey Down Road, Winkfield Road, Bracknell in Berkshire, I stated in error that the mound, which sits outside the red line of the application boundary, was caused by the administrators of the development company, as well as by the development company itself. I accept that this is untrue. While the role of the administrators is to have conduct and control of the company's assets, the mound was constructed long before the administrators took on such a role. The mound was constructed long before the developers company went into administration. I also note that in the supplementary planning report dated the 11th of September, there was no specific provisions concerning the mound, how it was generated and who is responsible. And furthermore, that the administrators are pursuing third parties to rectify the unlawful dumping that has created the mound through civil procedures. As the committee will understand, I have dealt with many issues on behalf of the residents over many months arising from their dissatisfaction within the mound, which has led to the prominence I've given it in my considerations. Although I recognise in terms of the application, this is not a material planning consideration. I therefore apologise to the administrators as well as to the committee for this incorrect statement. That is the end of the statement, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Virgo. Now I understand there's also a statement about the sill issue that was raised.
Thank you, Chair. This is a note for clarification. My name's Jo Mail and I'm the Assistant Director Planning. At the September Planning Committee, it was presented by officers that no sill payments or SPA contributions had been received for the site, land at the yard, Chavey Down Road, Winkfield, Bracknell, Berkshire, which was factually incorrect in respect of the sill payments. No SPA contributions had been paid for this site. Upon making inquiries, it has been established that a sill payment of £410,950 was cleared in April 2019 and a payment of £206 cleared in June 2019. A further sum pertaining to interest charges was also invoiced and received. The Council is in discussions with the administrators of the company over outstanding SIL charges and SPA contributions payable under the Section 106 agreement, which remain outstanding. All SIL payments made are fully recorded. Whilst this was not a material planning consideration for the Planning Committee, the above has been provided for clarity and transparency. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Jo. So now we turn to the rest of the meeting, starting with declarations of interest. Members are asked to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or affected interests in respect of any matter to be considered at this meeting. Any member with a disclosable pecuniary interest in a matter should withdraw from the meeting when the matter is under consideration and should notify a Democratic Services officer in attendance that they are withdrawing as they have such an interest. If the disclosable pecuniary interest is not entered onto the register of members' interests, the monitoring officer must be notified of the interest within 28 days. Do I have anybody with a disclosable interest? Councillor Barnard online.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Barnard here. Just to inform members that I will be not participating in the discussion or deliberation around the Warfield application, this evening, the Newell Green application, as it relates to land which adjoins the potential Warfield Community Hub. And as chair of the Planning Committee, as chair of the Warfield Parish Council and a member of the Parish Council, I believe that I have a substantive conflict of interest, so will not participate in that item.
Thank you. That's noted. Anybody else? No. Urgent items of business?
Non-notified, Chair.
Thank you very much. Now to our first item on the agenda, which is 28 Sandhurst Road, Woodbury. Who is presenting this, please? Oh, first of all, I should say we've got public speaking on this for. We have an objector and somebody standing for, and we'll hear those people after the officer has presented. Thank you, officer.
Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. Good evening. My name is Dexter Matthews. I'm the presenting officer for this case. This application is a Section 73 application seeking permission for the addition of a dormer and side window to the approved garage and the addition of first floor storage. The application site comprises of a recently built 3-storey replacement dwelling along Sandhurst Road and a recently approved detached garage to the front. The proposal has been outlined in red, but it's moved, apologies. Outlined red for context. The application has been referred to the committee following the receipt of over five objections. The main issues of concern are the loss of privacy and overlooking to the neighbouring occupants, the impact of overshadowing, loss of daylight, its impact on the character of the surrounding area, and whether it's unduly overbearing. Other issues have been raised and have regard to the height and size of the garage, its proximity to the neighbour, and that this is a retrospective application. To provide some context, planning permission was granted in 2022 for a detached carport and garage. A subsequent permission was granted for the relocation of the garage, moving it closer towards Sandhurst Road. Therefore, the principle of development was established for the garage. The only matters for consideration with this Section section 73 are the dormer and side-facing window. Following the member's site visit, you will have seen that the proposed development is substantially complete and the retrospective nature of this application. Whilst this is a retrospective application, and this has been raised by members of the public, it is not a material consideration in the determination of this application, nor a reason for refusal. As a result, this application should be considered on its own merits, of which we will now address. Many of the objections received reference overlooking and loss of privacy to the neighbouring occupiers. The proposed dormer would be just under 6 metres from the roof light at number 26, and the view towards the dormer can be seen here. The two other images demonstrate the relationship of the dormer to the neighbouring properties. Whilst the officer can sympathise with the neighbours for feeling overlooked, as the windows are to be obscure glazed and non-opening, they would not suffer from actual overlooking, and a reason for refusal could not be sustained on these grounds. Plans taken from a loft conversion at number 26 show there is a ground floor bedroom and a first floor bedroom on the southern boundary closest to the application site. It's worth noting that the first floor bedroom is dual aspect, benefiting from a roof light to the front and side facing window. The centre of the windows at number 26, so this first floor one, ground floor one here, are approximately 7.9 metres and 5.9 metres from the dormer's edge, which you can see here and here. Therefore, the dormer is not considered to cause any additional impact in terms of overshadowing, loss of daylight or sunlight, nor would this appear overbearing. As you may have seen in the officer's report, Appendix A showed numerous examples of small dormers, windows and gable details within the surrounding area. The proposed dormer would match the dormer on the host dwelling, you can see here, in terms of design and materials. Other examples of similar design can be seen opposite Church Street roundabout and along Crowthorne High Street. There are 2 examples of garages to the front with dormers at 51 and 53 Sandhurst Road, although I have noticed there's a typo here. It's not Fernbank Road. In conclusion, the scheme is considered to accord with the relevant policies of the Bracknell Forest Local Plan, the Parking Standards SPD, the Design SPD and the NPPF. The proposal is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out in section 11 of the committee report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Officer. May I call Christine Davis, please, for her presentation. Is that one? I've got to find it from the place here, haven't I? Ms Davis? Yes. I will be timing you. 3 minutes. 3 minutes, and you'll get a warning at 20 seconds left, but you carry on until the beeper goes. I'll just... Sorry?
Ready, steady?
Hang on, timer. Here we go. Ready, steady. Okay. Yeah.
Right. First of all, I'd like to thank Madam Chairman and the councillors for giving me this opportunity to raise my objections to the retrospective planning application. This is hardly a mere amendment to the original plans. It's gone from a single carport garage to a 2-storey garage with a side and rear dormer window that is taller than its neighbouring properties. We were not informed when the new plans to raise the height of the garage were submitted to the council in March of this year. And even worse, they had been passed and planning permission had already been granted. It was a complete surprise to see the building of the walls getting higher and higher and the timber roof structures clearly showing the intended dormer window, which obviously now is a bone of contention. The law clearly states councils are required to inform neighbours about a planning application. Bracknell Forest Council's own planning application website states neighbours should be notified of a planning application. Also, it should be published or displayed on notice boards. Myself and fellow neighbours do not recall of seeing any such notice. Not everyone has a computer and looks on the council's website every day to see if any planning applications have been submitted which would affect them. The two-storey garage clearly overwhelms the neighbouring properties, particularly with its close proximity to number 26. It's overbearing, it's oppressive as to the sheer size of the dormer window with the obscured glass at night time. When light is required, there will be a relevant amount of light diffused that will shine through onto its neighbouring driveways, thus an invasion of privacy. As you are all aware, there has been a lot of public interest in this planning application, with many comments from members of the public. The majority against the application. Yes, a few were out of the area. However, they too showed their objections, whether by driving past or seeing it on the planning portal, which I would like to add, the actual correct plans for the garage and dormer window were only uploaded onto the planning portal on the 17th of September. Once again, the bill does not reflect the actual planning consent, and once again, new amendments for the proposed elevation, proposed roof, and proposed section, and of course, once again, it has already been built. And of course, the planning application is currently under consideration. There is definitely a pattern here. It is considered by the planning department that the development is acceptable in principle and would not result in detrimental impact on the residential amenity of the occupiers of neighbouring properties, and have recommended to approve this window. The dormer window comparables at the end of the planning department document are above high street shops which face onto a public highway, a few private houses with dormer windows at the front of the properties, a block of flats which face onto their own private land. In fact, you can look all over Crowthorne and Bracknell and see hundreds of dormer windows, but there is not one.
Sorry, that's the end. Sorry.
Not one. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
And would you like to pause there for a minute? Do we have any questions of fact, please, from the members, the committee members?
How much longer did you have to speak, Madam Chairman?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. I don't think it's relevant. Sorry, she had her 3 minutes. Yeah. No, none. Thank you very much for your presentation. May we now have the applicant, Saffron Kifle? Would you like to come to the... Sorry. Same rules apply. I will restart in one moment. And I'll give you 3 minutes and give you a warning at 20 seconds when there's 20 seconds left. Are you ready? Yeah. Okay, start.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to speak this evening. We also extend our gratitude to the members who visited our home last Saturday. We trust you observed that the approved garage has now been completed and that the dormer integrates seamlessly with our house and the surrounding properties. We have lived at the property close to 10 years and feel part of the community. Last May, we were granted planning for the garage, which was met with no objections. It was therefore deeply distressing to us to receive negative responses for a minor amendment to the approved plans. This amendment was simply to create a small storage space and allow for a home office where we can work without disturbing our 3 young children who are between 2 and 9 years old. We want to address the concerns regarding the dormer. As the committee members will have seen from the enclosed plans on page 33, the dormer features a non-opening window with obscure glazing. As some have suggested, the dormer cannot therefore contribute to overlooking. Its purpose is purely functional, to allow natural light into what will be a store area and a home office, not for overlooking or disturbance. I would also like to draw your attention to agenda item 5 on page 29 of your report. In the Planning Officer's report, you will find a recommendation to approve this application as it fully complies with policy. The officer highlighted 3 important facts. Number 1, it does not cause overlooking. Number 2, it does not infringe on privacy. And finally, number 3, it does not impact the amenity of neighbouring properties due to the window being non-opening and obscured glazed. The officer's report concludes, and I quote, "It is considered that the dormer and side window would not have a detrimental impact on the character and appearance of the surrounding area, nor would windows have adverse impact on the amenity of neighbouring occupiers. In light of this assessment, we respectfully urge the committee to follow the officer's recommendation of section 11 of the report and approve our application. Thank you for your time." Thank you, everyone.
Would you like to pause in case we have any questions of fact? Just stay there for a moment. Do we have any questions from the committee? No, none. Thank you anyway. Would you like? Oh, have we got? Oh, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask to clarify, you mentioned several times use as a home office.
Yeah.
I don't believe that use is included on the description of the planning application. Is that correct, that that's the intended use of the space?
I'm hoping to escape there to do a bit of reading and phone calls, but I don't think it's not like a official detriment. To be honest, I don't exactly know. I can answer. Yeah, it's not like a, what do you call it? Like a professional high street office or something. It's just me going in there to take calls, so that when the kids are screaming for, it's just separate. It's just. Maybe that's why it's not on a piece of paper, I'm not sure, but it is something that I probably will be doing, going out on there, sitting and doing some of my paperwork. Is that okay?
Would you like to hang on a moment?
Yeah.
Could I have a comment from the
Could I just
Assistant
provide
Director?
a point of clarification, perhaps? So use as a home office would be incidental to the main use of the dwelling house, and so wouldn't require planning permission. So there wouldn't be a necessity to specify that in the application. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Chair, I didn't quite catch that.
I'm sorry. Yes, that's right. So the use as a home office would be incidental to the main use of the residential property, so wouldn't require a separate planning permission. It wouldn't, because it would be incidental to the main use of the dwelling house. Thank you.
Councillor Hayes.
Just clarifying on that point, therefore there is a condition that it could not be segregated and used as accommodation and has to
Sorry,
be...
that has. We're on the questions for the.
yes, sorry,
yeah.
we were just discussing.
Okay.
Yes, I will bring it
Hold
up.
that till later. Okay, thank you. Any other questions for our applicant? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, we also on the supplementary did receive additional representations. So now, questions for... Yes, questions for the officers. Officer, please. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. My main question for the officer, apologies, I'm just trying to find the right paragraph now. In paragraph 9.22 of your report, and also verbally in your report as well, you stated the view that the addition of the dormer to the approved garage is not considered to appear unduly overbearing. I'd just like to ask how that principle of overbearingness is assessed. Is that purely a sort of professional judgment, or is there some objective measure by which we would sort of determine whether the development is overbearing?
Could I have the officer?
I think, is it on? When compared next to the garage, it wasn't considered to be overbearing. I do believe it is subjective though, but in this case we felt it wasn't overbearing.
Anybody else have a question for the officer? No? Okay. So it's forced me to we're looking at the recommendation to move the recommendation on page 44 of the agenda pack. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Thompson, second. So who would like to open the debate, please? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Following on then from my question to the officer, I mean, I think the key issues surrounding this are, potential overlooking, the potential loss of sunlight to the neighbouring property, and for me, the sense of the development being overbearing. The first two of those points, I'm quite satisfied from the officer's report are adequately dealt with. The fact that the windows are fixed closed and the glazing is obscured, I'm quite satisfied that addresses the overlooking issue. Having been to site and reviewed it on the site visit at the weekend, I'm not particularly concerned about impact on sunlight. I think there's some quite large trees, etc. there. However, what does concern me about this development is the potential that it's overbearing in relation to the adjacent property. It's the garage as approved has a pitched roof which comes down at the property boundary to a level quite close to the boundary fence and similar to the frontage of the neighbouring property. And so as approved, I don't see any concerns with the garage, but the addition of the dormer creates what feels like a two-storey frontage right on that property boundary, well forward of the line of the surrounding properties, which for me, my view is that does create a sense of overbearingness, and I do note the officer's advice as just given that it is a subjective assessment, that there's not some sort of specific objective test of that. It's a matter of judgments. My judgment is that I think there is an unacceptable impact on the neighbouring property as a result of that. For that reason, subject to any other points raised by my colleagues during the debate, at this point, I don't feel I can support this application.
Thank you. Councillor Virgo.
Thank you, Chair. I too went to the site visit, and I can see why the applicant went for a window there. I can understand that completely. The problem, I think, is that you get the feeling it's so dominant to when you come into that drive, and I can see the neighbour feeling that they're overlooked, and I think I would feel the same. I think that would be particularly prevalent when you're at night and you see the light coming through, and I just think it's too much. So I'm afraid I can't support this either. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
I must also say I cannot support this. I agree with my two colleagues. Living quite near this area, I've seen this edifice go up, and I thought, well, that's fine, it's going to be a garage. But I didn't realise it was going to be rather more than a garage. And I'm finding it quite difficult that Section 73s are going through when it should actually be a further application. I really can't support this due to its mass and its bulk and overbearing for the next door neighbours.
Thank you. Councillor
I agree with what my colleagues have said. I wonder why the dormer wasn't built on the other side of the garage. It looks symmetrical. Thank you.
Councillor Collins.
Following on from Councillor Penfold, I noted that the officer did request the window be moved from the rear of the garage to the front, and I think if that had been done, that would have been preferable for me, so I will not be supporting the applicant either.
May I notify you that there is a blue sheet, an alternative motion to be had if this motion falls. But in saying that too, I do have concerns about this large addition to the roof for a window, and I noticed that the neighbours had Velux windows in their roofs facing onto this drive, and I felt a Velux roof would be more suitable. So I can't support the dormer window here either. Anybody else wish to speak? No? Shall we take a vote on the original motion, please? All those in favour?
That's none, Chair.
Those against?
That's unanimous, so the motion has fallen.
Thank you. Who's bringing the alternative motion? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. So I will move the motion as put on the blue sheet which the officers prepared in
It's now
advance of the
appearing
meeting.
on the screens, yeah. Thank you. Would you like to move that?
I believe you need a seconder, Chair.
Yeah. Seconder, Councillor Mackenzie Boyle. I know we've done questions, I think. Would you like to speak to that motion or reserve? Do you want to say anybody else?
I don't believe I have anything further to speak to. I think I said everything I needed to say in the main debate, Chair. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak? No? In that case, may we take a vote? All those in favour of the alternative motion?
That's unanimous, Chair, so it's passed.
Thank you very much. Are those here for that motion, item? If you would like to leave, you're most welcome to do that while we have a little lull. And then we'll move on to the next item, which has been moved. It's the flag at Times Square next. Are we expecting Councillor Purnell to appear? Okay. Has she got no idea? It should have happened before. Right. So we'll have the officer report. It starts on page 125 of the agenda pack. Who's presenting?
I am, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Will Rendell and I'm presenting the item for this evening. We seem to have a problem with the power presentation, so I'll see if I can fix that. That appears to be fixed. The application is for advertisement consent for the flying of the Pride Progress flag on an existing flagpole located outside Times Square, Bracknell Forest Council's offices for the period of 1st of June to the 30th of June annually. I would like to draw members' attention that one letter of representation, an objection has been received since publication of the supplementary report for this committee meeting. A flag is considered an advertisement. The display of advertisements is subject to a separate consent to be flown. The advertisement regulations states that the only matters that can be taken into account when in the case of an advertisement is amenity, such as design and public safety, which includes highway safety. I would like to draw members' attention to the fact that the similar Pride flag has deemed consent with the advertisement regulations. Members will observe from the presentation, if I can get it moving. Appears to be stuck. Can't seem to get it moving. I think I'll just continue without the presentation. Within the report, members would have noted that the photo of the proposed location of the flag, including the flagpole where it be flown. Members also note from the committee report that as the flag is proposed to be flown from an existing flagpole, it is not considered that the flying of the flag will raise any amenity or safety implications. Therefore, it is recommended that advertisement consent be given, subject to the conditions set out within the report. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Officer. So we have a public speaker for this item too. Could we call Malcolm Tullett, the objector, to the desk? Right, Mr. Tullett, I will give you the usual 3 minutes.
Sorry.
I'll give you the usual 3 minutes and give you a 20-second warning when you have 20 seconds to go, but you carry on speaking till the end of the 3 minutes, okay? Are you ready to begin? Yeah?
Thank you, Madam Chair and the Planning Committee. This objection addresses the Council's proposal to fly the flag progress every June. While occasional displays of the original Pride flag on specific days like Gay Pride are not opposed, the permanent annual display of the Pride Progress flag is a totally different matter due to its controversial nature. The claim that the display celebrates diversity and promotes inclusivity does not hold up under scrutiny and has already caused significant controversy and alienated residents, undermining the Council's stated goal of fostering inclusivity. Material planning considerations include impact on the character of the area, as the flag is politically sensitive, emphasising gender, identity and race, which detracts from the neutral civic character of the area. The Council's selective approach in allowing the flag while restricting others, like St George's Cross on St George's Day, highlights an inconsistency in its flag protocols. Such selectivity undermines its impartiality and neutrality. Impact on women's and children's rights. The inclusion of the transgender colours raises concerns about undermining rights and women's rights and safeguarding children. Promoting the flag could be seen as endorsing ideologies that comprise established protections, violating the Equality Act 2010, which mandates non-discrimination based on sex. The Planning Control of Advertisements Regulations 2007 require councils to consider the impact of symbols on public harmony. Unlike the Union flag, which represents unity, the fragmented symbolism of the Pride Progress flag suggests selective representation and weakens the inclusive appearance of civic spaces. Flying a contentious flag could create division, impacting the community character and indirectly affecting neighbouring properties. The Council's own policy, EN20, requires that proposals, I quote, respect the amenity, character and environment of the locality and avoid creating an adverse impact on community cohesion. Residents have already expressed serious concerns about exclusion, indicating that the flag may cause harm and community relations. Additionally, under Article 9.2 of the Council's own constitution, decisions must be made impartially and transparently, respecting all residents' views. Also, as outlined in Article 4.3, the lack of any consultation and broad community support for this flag contradicts the Council's own community involvement strategy. Flying this flag sets a precedent for other politically sensitive symbols, potentially leading to further disputes and legal challenges, as seen in Lewisham Council case and the removal of the flags in UK prisons. Maintaining neutrality is crucial for avoiding these issues. The Equality Act 2010 mandates that the public bodies must avoid discrimination.
Please stop.
Sorry?
Please stop. You've had 20 seconds more. I'm sorry you didn't hear me say.
I have a conclusion. It's simple. Can I just finish the conclusion? In conclusion, the officer's recommendations to support the annual display of the Pride Progress flag fails to account for its divisive nature, the impact on community cohesion and the council's inconsistent flag flying policies.
Thank you. That's enough. Please stop. You've had far more than the 3 minutes. I'm sorry.
It's not enough, sorry.
Well, I'm sorry. Everybody gets 3 minutes and you've had more. Does anybody have... I'm sorry, we don't take public comments. No, please stop. Please, no, be quiet. Councillors, do you have any questions of fact for Mr. Tullett? No questions of fact. Thank you. You can sit down, please. Please get out of the chamber if you're going to continue like this. Pardon?
I put it in a week ago.
Please remove yourself out of the chamber. Go. Go.
I followed the process and you've ignored it.
Go.
I shall make a formal complaint to the
You do.
And that's not the first time you've overruled these sort of things.
Can we continue in a civilised manner, please? Questions for the officer, please. Councillor Virgo.
Thank you, Chair. It's just something Malcolm Tullett said that I'm confused about. He said it would be on display all the time. It isn't, is it?
I'm sorry?
I'm questioning when it's going to be displayed, actually, to the officer.
Thank you.
To Will.
So the application states to be flown from the 1st of June every year to the 30th of June.
Thank you. So 1 month. Other questions? Councillor Penfold?
Are there other flags that ask permission to fly for this sort of period, such as some other groups celebrating women's abuse, for example? If they applied,
Thank you.
I can only comment on the application we got in front of us. The other flags that are flown are a matter for other matters, I'm afraid.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Do you have a question, Councillor Purnell? No. Okay. So it falls to me to present the recommendation on page 130 of the agenda pack and to move the recommendation to approve the flying of this flag from the 1st of June to the 30th of June. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Collins.
Councillor Collins.
Thank you. Would you like to speak now, Councillor Purnell? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak this evening. I want to begin by emphasising the critical role that this committee plays in shaping our community, not just in terms of physical structures, but also in the values that we embed into our spaces. Today I'm here not to sway your views on the specific proposal, but to advocate for the importance of a transparent, consistent and fair planning process. We all know that planning decisions are not easy. They require us to balance the technical, environmental and social impacts of each proposal. This balancing act is the essence of what we do. Our decisions must rest upon sound planning grounds, taking into account legislation, local policies and the broader context of community benefit. As we consider applications like the one today, it's crucial that we do so objectively and without prejudice, focusing on material planning considerations alone. In a diverse borough like ours, our decisions must be fair and reflect our commitment to inclusivity. While we rightly celebrate symbols that represent unity, diversity and respect, such as the Pride flag, it is essential that such symbols do not sway our judgment when evaluating a proposal. We are here to ensure that every application is considered on its merits, according to proper planning grounds. The strength of this planning committee lies in its ability to be consistent and fair to all, regardless of the message or intent behind an application. We should not allow any undue influence or personal convictions, no matter how noble, to affect the integrity of our process. It is through such careful and disciplined consideration that we uphold public trust and ensure the credibility of the decisions we make. That being said, I do wish to take a moment to acknowledge that our decisions inevitably shape the social fabric of our community. Though our role requires objectivity, the outcome of our choices creates the backdrop against which our community comes together and thrives. In this case, we must carefully weigh our duty to uphold planning law with our responsibility to foster an inclusive community environment for everyone. Let us remember, today and in the future, that our role is not to judge symbols, but to judge sound planning. I am confident that this committee will apply that principle fairly and thoroughly, considering every angle and every planning detail. I support a process that stands above political and emotional influence, one that ensures we make the right decisions for everyone in our community based on planning law and our collective policies. Today is an opportunity to demonstrate just how strong our commitment is to process, transparency and fairness. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the members for your time and dedication to our community.
Thank you, Councillor Purnell. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I certainly acknowledge that there are some in our communities for whom clearly this symbol may be considered somewhat controversial. I would also very much acknowledge that there are many in our communities who would identify with some of the marginalised groups and minorities that this flag represents, who over many years have suffered persecution and being ostracised, for whom this is an incredibly important step. However, I think it's really important just to reiterate Councillor Purnell's point that neither of those matters are valid planning considerations. I think there's a lot of public interest in this, and there are many members of the public in the gallery today who I think are hoping to hear a debate about whether or not we feel the council should be flying this flag. But fundamentally, that is not the question that's before us tonight as Planning Committee. The question is the flying of this flag consistent with planning policy or not? And I've heard no argument from anyone this evening presenting anything approaching a valid planning reason by which we could object to this application. So for that reason, I will be supporting it.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Councillor Virgo.
Thanks, Chair. I understand some people may not be in agreement with this, but I think life goes on, very much so. And we are a community that wants to embrace all parts of that community. That's absolutely what Bracknell stands for. And there has been, in the past, obviously opposition, resentment to the gated community. And I feel very strongly, frankly, that we all stand together as a community. No matter what we stand for, we are together, and this council stands for that. I actually believe in flags, actually, and I'd like to see this council use the flag more often. I mean, I tried to get, actually, St George's flag up, which I had tremendous trouble doing, actually, and I don't see it in the years since I was mayor. So I'd like to see that. I'd like to see the Welsh flag. I'd like to see the Scottish flag, for that matter. We're a wonderful country. We should celebrate that. And if there are bits of the community that have been forgotten in the past, let's show we can support them. I'll support this, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
I concur with my colleagues. It's something that we should do. I don't think we should bring emotion into any of our debate, because I did feel that was sort of coming in. What we have to remember is that we have to do this on planning, material planning considerations.
Thank you. You're absolutely right. Are there any other comments? Planning considerations only. shall we take a vote on this? Those in favour of the approving this application?
That's unanimous, Chair, so it's carried.
Thank you very much. Thank you, members. Oh, I'm sorry, I haven't been looking online. Councillor Gareth Barnard, would you like to
Thank you very
say-
much.
I'm so sorry.
No. I put my hand up after the vote.
Okay.
What I would like to say, Chair, is I think that you handled that previous item very, very well. I am wondering that in future, if we should just have a reminder to members of the public attending as to the standards of behaviour expected in the council chamber when attending and witnessing a meeting, because I think it's iniquitous that you're put in the position that you were in terms of having to respond in the way that you did.
Thank you. Shall we move on to the item 6 on the agenda, Land at Priory Fields, Newell Green. It starts on page 49 of the agenda pack.
Just to give notice that I will not be participating in this item. Do I physically
yes.
have to leave the meeting, Chair, or
No.
can I just sort of not participate?
Just don't participate, thank you.
Thank you.
I've had guidance, thank you very much. Yes, I should also mention that we have lots of information on the supplementary report, pages 1 and 2. Are we? Yes. So, may we have the officer report, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jessica Taylor and I'm the Senior Planning Officer in the Strategic Sites team. I'm going to present this outline application for the erection of up to 150 dwellings, including affordable housing, 2 new roundabouts, forming access, a neighbourhood centre, access to the proposed community hub, as well as associated infrastructure to support the development. Through this presentation, I'd like to make an amendment to Condition 16 to include reference to the delivery of a controlled crossing over Forest Road towards Warfield Memorial Ground, subject to this being required as an outcome of an independent road safety audit required as part of any necessary highways agreements. Let's move to the site context. This site is approximately 2 kilometres north of Bracknell and it's within the settlement boundary. It's also within the strategic allocation of Warfield, which was first identified through the core strategy in 2008, formally allocated through policy SA9 of the Site Allocations Local Plan in 2013. It is located in Area 1 of the Warfield SPD, which the Council agreed a master plan for in 2015. The site location is here, with a red line abounding it. To the south is currently the Priory Fields playing field site, where there is a proposed new community centre. To the east is Old Priory Lane, and then, further east, the Taylor Wimpey development approved by this planning committee. To the western boundary is Newell Green, and to the north is Warfield Street, with the Grade 2 listed Newell Hall, the opposite side of the carriageway. Oh, there we go. The site is currently a mix of unmanaged grassland and scrub, with woodland to the north of the site. Lots of juvenile trees on the southern half of the site and brambles mixed with blackthorn have grown along the boundary with Priory Fields playing fields since the site allocation. Mature hedgerow lies along Old Priory Lane and several mature trees around the site boundary. There is a small pond to the northeast. The land slopes gently to the northwest towards Osborne Lane. Turkey oak trees, as you can see here, are located on the boundary with Newell Green, opposite the Plough and Harrow. There's also a TPO which covers trees, including English oaks, on the northern side of Forest Road. Hopefully you can see where I'm pointing. Site is within flood zone 1. There's a very low risk of fluvial or surface water flooding. Outline planning permission only is sought for details of site access, and there's a set of parameter and strategy plans which will set out the design framework for future reserve matters application. Details concerning the design of buildings, layout, landscaping, parking and infrastructure are subject to subsequent reserve matter applications which will be consulted on separately. The site would deliver up to 150 dwellings and include 35% affordable housing and accessible housing to a policy compliant level. There are 2 main vehicular access points: the northern roundabout, which would replace the Plough and Harrow crossroads, and a compact roundabout to the south, opposite the Trussell Road development. Here, I think you can see that. There would also be a neighbourhood centre with up to 1,000 square metres of Class C floor space, access to the proposed community centre to the south, landscaping and green infrastructure, pedestrian and cycle connectivity, and also on-site and off-site drainage infrastructure. This illustrative layout you can see now has been submitted only to demonstrate that the number of dwellings, neighbourhood centre and associated infrastructure could be delivered within the constraints of the site. Approval of the application tonight would not result in this site layout. This has been conveyed to the applicant, who will positively work with us to make improvements at reserved matters stage. Looking at the northern roundabout, this is proposed to replace the existing junction at the Plough and Harrow. The need for a strategic highway improvement in this area has been identified since the site allocation, and the master plan does quote the need for a 3 or 4 arm roundabout, dependent on design considerations such as drainage, land constraints, highway safety, and the character of the area at application stage. The roundabout is shown to provide suitable capacity to serve the site and also traffic flows from the wider network. It provides pedestrian and cycle links to the site and wider area, and it includes several different types of crossings and several options to give a choice of routes. It provides the main residential access and service access for the proposed neighbourhood centre. The design includes improvements to highways drainage and 2 attenuation basins which form the basis of the drainage strategy. The location requires the removal of TPO Turkey oak trees, but will move hard landscaping away from the TPO'd English oak trees that are to the north of Warfield Street. It must be noted that any junction improvements in this location are extremely likely to result in the removal of a number of trees. The southern compact roundabout, shown here, is proposed in the location identified at master plan stage and accepted through the approval of the Trussell Road scheme opposite the proposed new access. Importantly, it will deliver an access for the community facility proposed on Priory Fields. This will come forward through a separate application. The community facility is required as part of Policy SA9 to support development in the area. A zebra crossing is shown north of the roundabout, enabling safer routes for existing and future residents, just at the top of the screen there. A toucan or Pegasus crossing will link less formal routes from east to west and is located south of the compact roundabout. You can see it in this bright blue line here. The Highways Officer has been consulted throughout the planning application process and is supportive of the proposal, subject to suitably worded conditions and planning obligations. There are a number of parameter plans and strategies for approval, and these reflect the Area 1 Master Plan guidance. The parameter plans show higher densities and taller buildings to the south of the site around the proposed neighbourhood centre and overlooking the playing fields. The plans show lower densities and heights, a maximum of 2 storeys, as you move north through the site towards more sensitive locations such as along Old Priory Lane. A side-on relationship is proposed with Old Priory Lane. This gives more space between built form and the hedgerow as depth of gardens are side-on. It also gives ample opportunity to increase the depth of planting and landscaping. As you can see here, this is the existing planting. The urban design strategy shows the gardens of dwellings backing onto the woodland between Warfield Street and the application site. Whilst normally an active frontage would be encouraged, in this case it will protect Newell Hall, which is Grade 2 listed, from any impact of development. The neighbourhood centre is proposed to the southwest of the site, fronting the new access road to the south. The building heights parameter plan shows up to 3 stories, and the urban design strategy notes that a key building of high quality design would be required in this location, as well as other prominent locations on the site. You can see that with this blue wheel. To the northwest of the site, dwellings would front the attenuation basins on the roundabout and be a maximum of 2.5 stories. Ample space is shown to soften the frontage of the development with appropriate planting around the basins, the details of which are secured by landscaping condition. The green infrastructure plan shows retention of the areas of most ecological significance and shows where green corridors could be delivered, both on the western boundary and as shown here on the principal street, where it is demonstrated that there is sufficient space for swales and tree planting. The scheme will result in the loss of some trees and vegetation, as shown in the submitted agricultural impact assessment. This includes 4 turkey oak trees and a mature oak tree, which is not subject to a TPO, located opposite the access for the Trussell Road development. You can see that here. The loss of this oak tree to allow for the compact roundabout was not taken lightly by the council. A roundabout in this location has been indicated since the site was allocated. It was shown in the Area 1 master plan, and the development opposite, this Linden Homes development at Trussell Road, was approved at committee with land safeguarded here and here for the implementation of a roundabout in the future. Several other access arrangements have been considered. Staggered crossroads and larger or relocated roundabouts were ruled out due to highway safety concerns and land constraints. The 4-arm roundabout realigns Warfield Street and moves hard landscaping further south, away from root protection areas of trees within TPO, several of which are mature English oak trees. Notwithstanding risks during construction, which will be mitigated by conditions, the new road layout should benefit these trees in the long term. The applicant has worked with the council to explore options and minimise impact on trees. Substantial revisions have been made based on recommendations for highway safety and access provisions for the proposed community facility on Priory Fields. The development is not considered to prejudice any other sites and generally accords with the Area 1 master plan. The proposal's main deviations from the master plan are as follows. There is a 4-arm roundabout providing access to the site. Providing residential access to the development from the northern roundabout is a different proposal to that originally specified in the master plan. Paragraph 3.4.13 of the Area 1 master plan does, however, state that a 4-arm roundabout may be required. Access to the site from the northern roundabout removes the need from an additional junction off the east of Newell Green, which results in benefits for the scheme, including increased retention of woodland in the north of the site, more space for the roundabout in the site, moving hard landscaping away from the TPO'd oaks along the north of Warfield Street. No need to increase the width of Newell Green for a right-hand turn lane, and the retention of more trees and vegetations along the east of Newell Green. Proposals show limited residential access from the compact roundabout to the southwest of the site. This was not indicated in the master plan, but it does bring wider benefits to the scheme and the public by securing delivery in the first phase of development. This will facilitate access to the community hub proposal, allowing this delivery to come forward. The Area 1 master plan does show limited vehicular access onto Old Priory Lane. This application stops up the new access road to vehicles before Old Priory Lane, as you can see at the bottom here. This approach is supported as it will allow for the retention of continuous mature hedgerow and trees along the west of Old Priory Lane and the east of the site. The Council's Heritage Advisor also supports this approach as it lessens any impact on the Grade 2 listed Priory Cottage, which is opposite. Whilst the Area 1 master plan and general design principles encourage primary frontages to face outwards, the parameter plans do show that residential development along the north of the site will face inwards and back onto the existing woodland. This retains more woodland to the north of the site, which benefits biodiversity and increases separation between new built form and the setting of Newell Hall. In addition, it will reduce potential for light pollution. The Council is satisfied that the development of this parcel, despite the departures from the master plan above, would not prejudice the comprehensive delivery of the SA9 allocation. A full list of planning obligations are in the report, but I'd like to point out that any approval would result in contributions towards the proposed community hub at Priory Fields, open space improvements in Warfield, delivery of an access for the proposed community hub, a contribution of around £1.12 million towards biodiversity net gain delivery in the borough, a financial contribution towards a controlled crossing on Newell Green, SBA mitigation and affordable and accessible housing secured to a policy compliant level. Further details are set out in the report. All concerns raised by residents and Warfield Parish Council have been addressed thoroughly in the report. The proposal is also considered to appropriately address biodiversity and drainage issues, Thames Basin Heath SPA mitigation, general infrastructure requirements and renewable energy policies. The development accords with the SALT policy SA9, the development plan and the Area 1 master plan. All consultees listed in my report either do not object or recommend approval subject to conditions and or Section 106 legal obligations. The tree officer has raised concern over the loss of trees. This concern is addressed in the planning balance. To conclude, as set out in my main report, the application is recommended for conditional approval subject to the completion of a Section 106 legal agreement and also the amendment to Condition 16 mentioned at the beginning of my presentation. Thank you, Chair. Sorry it was quite long.
No, we appreciate the detail you've given us. Thank you very much. Questions for the officer, please, members. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. And it was an interesting site visit on Saturday. Can I just ask, please, if there's going to be 150 dwellings, and obviously this is outlined, we don't know whether they're going to be 2, 3, 4 bedroom units. We won't call them houses, we won't call them flats because we don't know. However, really, does not, in my view, support LP 27 for climate change? That is a really green area in that area. Do you feel that we won't be supporting such a key climate emergency situation at the minute?
Sorry, is your question whether the application, through you, Chair, whether the application is in compliance with policy LP 27 of climate change? Is that the question? Kind of?
Yeah, I think so, yes. And I believe Assistant Director is having a look at the policy.
Shall I respond to that? Thank you, Chair. So if this is an allocated site, and as the case officer said, both in the SALP policy SA9, and that's obviously been carried forward and as part of the current development plan. Policy LP27 relates to climate change, and it indicates that we would take a proactive approach to mitigating risks, and then sets out a number of factors which have been taken into consideration in the determination of this application. And I would reference you to factors, for example, using sustainable drainage systems. There's something about stringent water usage standards, and obviously that's reflected in one of the conditions on the agenda. Incorporating tree planting, landscaping would be part of a reserve matters, and that would be and is also secured by condition. So I believe that this, as I say, it is a strategic allocation, and its development would be consistent with the climate change policy LP27.
Thank you very much indeed for that very comprehensive response.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Virgo.
Sorry, I'm trying to find the button. Jess, can I just ask you, I think I've asked this before, but the two ponds that are on the plan, they're, and I forgot what you said, but they are they not, they're not balancing ponds, they're something else, aren't they?
Yes, they are, through your chair, they are
Yes.
attenuation basins.
Yes.
They're required as part of the drainage strategy. So obviously the site drains to the north-west towards Osborne Lane, and attenuation basins are there to help drain the site and control the flows off the site so that they're not too quick. They're not intended to be wet all year round, which I believe is the question you've asked me.
It is, because it would be great if this was a wildlife pond, one of them, because it would be such you know, an addition to the existing community to see that on that corner.
Should we
And
have
I
a
don't
question,
quite, well,
please? Can
yes,
we have a question?
so can it? Sorry.
Can it?
Thank you, Chair.
I don't, apologies, Chair, through you, Councillor Virgo, I don't believe it could be wet all year round, because then it wouldn't have enough capacity, obviously, to deal with the drainage from the site. However, I believe, I mean, we can clarify with biodiversity officers, but I do believe that basins that have wet and dry seasons do provide a biodiversity benefit, just not the same as a pond that's wet all year round, and the pond to the northeast of the site will be retained.
Could I just ask a further question? Good luck on the weather, because I think the weather will change that situation. Could I just ask, at the moment there is heritage street lamps that we saw on the site visit. How are you going to smooth that in to the estate? Because otherwise it's going to look like there's heritage one side and then there's some completely different the other side. How's that going to work, please?
Through you, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah.
If you have a look at 9.92 of the my report, you can see that we have requested we've added a hard landscaping condition. It's quite a stringent condition that requires details of all hard landscaping, including that within the highway, and it includes details of lighting. And we have noted as well in the report and in the condition that the Council's Heritage Advisor will be consulted on that condition and required to give advice on the best options going forward. Obviously in collaboration with the highways officers as well.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor Virgo again.
Chair, could I just ask if we could take a glimpse of those as well as a committee? Because I know that community has, fought for those heritage lamps for a long time, and I think we'd just be interested to see what comes up as a scheme. Perhaps I should say that when I sum up, I don't know.
Yes, that's for one for that. Officer.
Through you, Chair. My manager here has just said that we can follow the protocol of notifying members when that condition comes in, as we have done previously, so that they can be actively involved in that.
Great, thank you very much. Any Councillor Collins?
There is a field access on the north of Warfield Street. I believe there was a meeting with the resident yesterday, but is there an update? Has that location of that field access been confirmed?
Through you, Chair. Land ownership is not going to be a planning consideration tonight. However, the location of the field gate is shown on the plans, which are before you and here. I can put them on the screen if you'd like to see that. The field access is proposed to be moved 30 metres further east. It is of the same width, size, specification as currently proposed. The applicant, I believe, has been meeting with the landowner adjacent, but as I've said before, the actual ownership itself is not a planning consideration. The access is, highways officers have said they're happy with the proposals.
Thank you very much. Councillor Penfold. Switch on.
So,
no, that's it.
Sorry, inadvertently I was talking to a lady who happened to live in Priory Lane, and she was quite accepting of the fact that there was going to be building on the field, even though she didn't want to lose the green field, but that's another matter. But she was very anxious that the hedgerows were not grubbed up, which the report suggests they are not going to be. But can you sort of reassure us that this will be built into the whatever you do to give permission, and there will be penalties if people don't.
Thank you.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah,
officer?
sorry, can I just clarify, Councillor Benfold, that you are referring to the hedgerow along the east side of Old Priory Lane?
I think it was. I didn't even know where it was when I was talking to the lady. Yes. I think it was
Apologies,
Priory
West.
Lane she referred to. So, thank you.
Apologies, I meant the west of Old Priory Lane, not the east. Yeah, although obviously the east will be still there too.
East side.
Yes, there is proposed for retention, the hedgerow along Old Priory Lane. In fact, the proposals go further than the master plan and aren't allowing for any vehicle access, so there will be more retained than originally proposed in the master plan.
Thank you.
Can I ask about the pedestrian access through there? There was a concern that it was right opposite somebody's drive. It's towards the north of Old Priory Lane of the site.
Apologies, I'd just like to consult a plan.
That's all right. I'm just wondering if that could be moved somewhere that's not right opposite somebody's drive. Or is that something we could discuss later?
Thank you, Chair. If you're referring to the site, the pedestrian access further north of Old Priory Lane, it's something that we can look to get the exact details through the reserve matters, and obviously we would consider the residential amenity of neighbours through that. This permission tonight would not determine the exact location of that.
Thank you, that's lovely. Anybody else have questions? Councillor Collins.
I note in 9.127 that strategic SAN capacity has been reserved. Could you tell me where that is, please?
Apologies. Through you, Chair, I don't think I can tell you tonight. Simon Cridland deals with the strategic SAN capacity. It may be something that Joe can look up in the background on the planning portal, as it might be in his appropriate assessment response. Alternatively, Stephen Chown may be able to look it up as he is online. It's not something I have to hand right now. Apologies.
Let's let that go along in the background. Is anybody? Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies if I've just come in late on this, but however, have we considered policy 54, the protection and enhancement of trees and hedgerows? Because we were looking at the hedgerow on Saturday and we were quite voluble, were we not, on what it was looking like and how much we were going to lose.
I think you mean the southern one, don't you? Yeah.
Thank you. We can talk about hedgerows, yep. So this is something that on this site comes down to planning balance. Regrettably, development of this site will result in the loss of vegetation and trees. The boundary between Priory Fields, playing fields and the south of the site is not considered hedgerow. It's currently bramble shrub with some blackthorn in there. We indeed have photographic evidence that has grown up in the last 10 years or so since the site was allocated. Notwithstanding, I understand it still has a biodiversity value, which is accounted for in the biodiversity assessment. So no, I can't confirm that it fully accords with that policy. However, like I've said, it comes down to the planning balance, and when I look at the benefits of the proposal weighed up with everything else, I've come to the conclusion to recommend the site.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Collins.
I'm going to come back to climate. I can see that air source heat pumps are proposed for the development. Will there be any solar panels on top of that, or will that be looked at again at reserved matters?
Through you, Chair. So we have a climate change assessment that has been submitted. I'm sure that's probably what you've got the air source heat pumps from. Yeah, at this stage it's quite high level. It's just showing that they can demonstrate they will be looking to conform to those policies. We have also several conditions. And again, yeah, you're right, the design of dwellings will come down to reserve matters stage and be assessed at that point. Obviously, we'll get input from any specialist needed.
Thank you very much. Do we nearly have an answer?
Sorry, through you, Chair. Unfortunately, I don't think the consultation response specifies exactly where the SPA mitigation would be, where the sand capacity is. So I'm
Right.
afraid I can't answer that question at the moment. It would be within the catchment area of that SANG.
Okay.
There's a requirement that the mitigation is within the catchment of the SANG, so it would be the closest SANG, but I can't confirm exactly which one, with capacity, I can't confirm exactly which one that would be.
So how can you tell us how far away that would be from the site?
I'm afraid, Chair, I don't have that information in front of us from the
we
planning
need to
portal.
do some homework on that, don't we? Thank you.
Yeah, it would be one of the already existing SANGs,
Yes.
as we work on that basis. And also, I think part of the problem with allocating it at this point, we allocate capacity. We have plenty in the bag for allocated sites, but the issue we have is when we don't have a select dwelling mix, which will affect how much capacity is exactly needed. So, you know, at outline stage, it's quite hard to allocate a specific SANG, but there are several in the area with capacity. So it's not something that we get concerned about right now, and we have followed the correct procedure for appropriate assessments in
Lovely.
accordance with Natural England.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Sorry, Chair. Looking at the affordable housing that's going to be, will we have specialist housing also included in there, after we have asked for on other sites?
Can I clarify through you, Chair, whether Councillor Mackenzie Boyle means accessible housing or any particular type of specialist housing, or are we, is there anything in particular?
That would be for all areas for specialist housing, shall we say, for invalids, and we have specialist parking as well. We need to ensure that that's factored in.
We have policy compliant levels of accessible housing specified through condition and section 106 planning obligation. I believe that the housing officers will provide, input at reserve matter stages to exactly what's required in terms of size, type and location, as happens generally across the borough with these large outline applications.
Thank you. Good to raise that now, so we're heads up and the developer knows we're concerned. Councillor Virgo.
Just on the trees that we are going to plant, we've had a discussion about this actually. It just concerned me about looking after those trees. And did you say, just so it's in my mind, it was going to be the borough that would look after them, or how does that work out in terms of watering and to make sure they mature properly and look after them? Please.
Thank you. Chair, can I just confirm that Councillor Virgo is referring to any proposed trees around the attenuation basins or just generally across the whole site?
Yes, he's nodding.
I can't see behind me. Through you, Chair. Okay, so the proposed tree planting around the attenuation basins, subject to visibility, would be within the highways or drainage, so therefore would be maintained by ourselves as the Highways Authority. I'm looking at James for confirmation, he's saying yes. Any proposed tree planting on site would obviously be either residents or management company, and as planting, landscaping is secured through the biodiversity implementation plans. There's also planning obligations as well as conditions which secure the maintenance for a minimum of 30 years, which is generally plenty to establish planting.
Thank you, yes. Yes.
Through you, Chair, just to add to that,
Yeah.
James Turner Highways. In relation to the highways trees, and you'll see in the report, agreements will be required to construct the new roads, and those agreements will also include the provision for maintenance sums towards looking after infrastructure that is extraordinary to the function of the highway, such as the trees that are shown. So that would be secured through a separate process, but that would be there to help the ongoing maintenance for a reasonable period of time.
Thank you, that's very important. Enough questions? Anybody online? No? No hands up? Okay. I think it's time to move the recommendation. Page 96 of the agenda pack. And considering what's on supplementary report as well. Do I have a seconder, please? I move the recommendation, but Councillor Collins.
I will second, Councillor Collins.
Thank you. Anybody wish to speak in favour or just comment, please? Councillor Virgo.
Madam Chair, I'll go with this. It does concern me though, and when I see oak trees being pulled down in this borough, I just think we shouldn't do it, frankly. And I know we've been talking about this, and in fact your very suggestion was to lift it, and you know, it's a good suggestion, but I think probably impractical because of the size. But it is very sad that we do this. I do worry about the hedgerows, actually. I know Jess has explained that it's an organic one, in other words, made up of hawthorn, all kinds of other things. But, you know, this is a natural countryside and it's what people are used to. And it breaks up the development, in my view, and that's terribly important, I think. So to see that go to, you know, what can I say? I'm not happy with it. I'd like to see the lighting very carefully done and not the usual lights that look like scaffolding poles, because I can't stand them personally. And this is a country area and we've got to respect that. I understand, look, this is going to be a little urban. Of course it is, because it's going to give Warfield a centre, which it needs. And that's all good. And I know the team have done very well. You know, I've got to say thank you to the team because they've worked really hard on this. I know they have. And they've tried to get everything out of this, and it's not easy from the developers. So, you know, that's a thank you to them. But, you know, we've got to say these things because we're trying to protect this area for the residents and so on. So I'll support it with a little bit of annoyance in my heart. So that's it.
Thank you, Councillor Virgo. Who else would like to speak? Excuse me. Councillor Collins.
I shall just echo what Councillor Virgo said. I guess planning is a balance, and I can see the benefits of it. We will get a neighbourhood centre, which is much needed, and delivery of hopefully the Warfield Community Hub as well as a result of this. The oak tree, the particular oak tree we're all concerned about, as the planning officer has said, will be removed as part of the implementation of the southern roundabout, which was mentioned in the planning application for the Trussell Road development. I had a look, and it was noted in the report there that this roundabout would be there, but there seemed to be no mention at the time of the removal of the oak tree as a result of that, but I don't know, perhaps it should have been obvious. I'm pleased that the northern roundabout has shifted so that the 8 native oak trees which are TPO'd there will have better protection and hopefully will therefore live longer. And I'm pleased that the wider woodland belt to the north of the site is being retained, so more trees. It's always disappointing to lose trees. We're losing the 4 Turkey oaks, but on the other hand, they aren't necessarily good for native oaks. So as long as we replant, I know it will take a while to grow, but I'm happy with that. The residents of Newell Green from Water Splash Lane up to the Plough and Harrow crossroads are very disappointed that they are not going to be on the closed part of the road as per the original master plan. However, there was a caveat in the master plan which said that the design of the northern roundabout and the roads might change and it might become a four-arm motorway. I think perhaps in future we need to be better at indicating to residents that these are just indicative plans and can be changed as the result of a more detailed design process. The flooding which occurs at the Plough and Harrow crossroads at the moment has been partially addressed or fixed, but this development will provide an extra pipe across the junction which will take some of the water from the attenuation pond away, and I believe there is a proposal in the S106 agreement to take some money to towards improving the flooding situation down at the bottom of Osborne Lane, which is another positive for the residents around there. I think on balance that I will be supporting this application.
Anybody else? No? Then I must thank Councillor Collins for her sterling work and of inquiry and general making sure. It's excellent. And whilst I do have the reservations that my co-councillors have about the poor old oak tree, I understand about the funny old hedge that isn't very old, and I thank the officers for making sure that those items will be compensated in the biodiversity measures that we take as a council. And I think that this could be a very useful and good looking and biodiversity-ish little estate when it gets going, and we've got to keep an eye on it. We will keep an eye on it to do the lighting and everything else really. So we'll look with interest how this progresses. I intend to support the recommendation. Shall we take a vote? Those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair, so it's carried.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, officers. So the next the next item is the land north of Newhouse Gardens in Wolffield. May we have our officer of presentation, please? Oh. Oh yes, that's a good point. Yes, good idea. Yes, excuse me, officer. Should we take a few minutes break? Would that be useful? Yes. 5 minutes? Right. We'll see you in 5 minutes. Are we offline? Ready to begin again. We're just waiting to go online. Thank you and welcome back. We've had a little break. We've got 3 more to go. So this one is the land north of Newhouse Gardens, page 113 on the agenda. And we have Officer Sarah Fryer. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The application before you relates to a discharge of conditions application at Land North and Newhouse Gardens, Warfield. The application submits details pursuant to conditions 9, 10 and 13 of application 22/0/1047/FUL, which gave consent for the erection of up to 50 residential units and associated works. These 3 conditions seek to minimise and control the impacts of the construction phase of development on the highway, environment and biodiversity. Full wording of the conditions can be found on page 115 of the reports pack. The applicants have submitted a Construction Environmental Management Plan, or KEMP, which contains all the information to discharge the 3 conditions. This application seeks to establish whether the submitted KEMP and associated vehicle tracking details are sufficient to meet the requirements of the 3 conditions that relate to traffic and highway safety, the environmental implications and the protection of biodiversity during the construction phase. A KEMP addresses how adverse impacts associated with development and cumulative impacts of any nearby construction sites can be managed. A certain amount of disturbance, inconvenience and noise can be expected during construction works. However, unacceptable impacts can be avoided by putting in place certain measures secured within the KEMP. Following a number of revisions, the Highway Authority, Environmental Health Officer and Biodiversity Officer have concluded that the KEMP would acceptably manage the effects of the construction phase on surrounding residents and protect the retained biodiversity. You will note from the report that a number of objections have been received. It should be noted that whilst many objections are not relevant to this application, others have been addressed through amendments to the KEMP. For example, the hours of operations have been reduced to finish at 5:30 rather than the originally proposed 6 p.m. or when it gets dark, whichever is the sooner. This is a betterment than the Council's usual acceptable working hours of 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Following the submitted amendments, no objections remained by the Council specialist consultants to the application, and the application is therefore before committee for approval. It was a difficult one to do a presentation for, so I've just put in a couple of the plans, the site layout plans for the initial phase setup. So there's a small parking area here whilst they construct the access, which is conditioned to be constructed before any other construction begins. And then the site compound will be here in the hatched blue and green areas. The green areas are the parking, so personnel parking. There's adequate space on site for all personnel parking, and site welfare facilities, storage of materials is located further away from existing residents. This is the amended delivery strategy policy. It has now included other surrounding streets which were excluded to start with, and here's the photo of the access that everybody should know well and an aerial of the site. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of the officer, please? Councillor Virgo.
Could I just ask about the parking, Sarah? It does worry me. I mean, is the construction going to park on the site itself, or I can see the residents going absolutely bananas in Newhouse Gardens with all the parking there. How does that? How are we going to manage that?
Through you, Chair. Parking. There is adequate parking or space made available within the site for parking area. So as you can see from this plan here, there's approximately 68 spaces provided within the site, which is more than adequate for a development site of this size of 50 houses. And it's the same with...
Sorry, I wasn't going to think of that. I was thinking of the construction side, actually, because obviously it's grass at the moment, isn't it?
So this is the construction. So whilst
Right.
the construction, there's a phasing plan that basically says they'll start at this end of the site and move up through. So whilst these houses are being built, this will be the parking compound for all personnel associated with the construction phase of the development. And there is adequate parking within the site, so there should be no need for personnel to park off-site.
Right, so just to be clear about this, they're going to go in there and they're going to dig and tarmac it, are they? And make footings for car parking?
Through you, Chair. It is part of the development site which will be developed. So they will construct the roadway through to the site compounds as part of one of the first phases of the development. Set up their site compounds and provide, whether it be loose chip-ins or gravel for people to park. I mean, I am sure, Councillor Virgo, we've got many development sites in this borough, and the gardens do not remain as nice, pristine bits of gardens. They are churned up and it does get muddy. So it's part of the development area. It's not part of the green space. It will be constructed and built out once they get to these phases of the dwellings. So there's no objection from officers with regard to, the loss of garden areas for parking during the construction phase. That's perfectly normal and usual practice.
Okay, if I can just ask another one. I accept all that, of course I do, because I've seen it, but do we have adequate cleaning for the road and all that? Is that that's all in the conditions, is it? And I know Andy's going to reach for the microphone.
Through your Chair, Andy Wells, Highways. Yes, the revised KEMP sets out how wheel washing and also sweeping of the highway will be undertaken. The sweeper requirements are set out in section 3.4 of the KEMP on page 13, noting that the roads will be swept, and we have asked for that to include a requirement if we, as Highway Authority, request it. That is under section 3.5.1 part C.
That's fine.
Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Thank you, Chair. May I ask, I assume that the developers will have given a travel plan. How many heavy-duty lorry movements are they expecting?
The total number of movements I don't believe is set out in the report. It's anticipated. The time frame for the construction is set out in Table 1, key construction activities and anticipated durations. Access road works 2 months, Section 278 2 months, infrastructure 6 months, substructure 12, superstructure 30 months. But some of those activities may overlap, and it is normal construction practice to have heavy vehicles during those time periods, and there are sufficient places where they can turn around within the site in order to deliver and construct the development which is already approved. It's a standard practice.
There would be no intrusion on any of the other areas around?
There shouldn't be.
Okay.
And that's what this KEMP sets out.
Further questions? Yes, Councillor Virgo.
Sorry, I think in the guidelines on the report is the hours of work. Can we make it mandatory? I'm just thinking of the residents, that's all.
Through you, Chair.
Yeah.
Yes, this is part of the the hours of work within the Kemp are for approval. If they don't comply with them, we can take enforcement action.
that's fine.
So they are mandated.
Thank you very much.
No more questions? None online? Oh, we've got Simon Cridland. Oh, that's, sorry. Oh dear. Okay. So the recommendation is on, thank you, page 123 of the report. And I move that we approve. Do I have a seconder?
Councillor Collins.
Thank you. Do we have any comments to make before we vote? No? You would like to? Yeah.
Yes, just to say that I read the SEMP or KEMP and it seemed very comprehensive to me. There is proposal for a communications plan with the residents, and I hope that good relations can be developed between the residents and the developer, given that it has had such a troubled history, this site.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Collins. Yes, definitely response from officers, and hopefully the developers is trying to make things right for the residents from how things are set out now. Excuse me. Shall we take a vote? Those in favour shall approve.
That's unanimous, so it's carried, Chair.
Thank you. Okay. The next is item number 9, actually. It's the land adjoining Pine Acres, Birch Lane, Ascot. I think it's Officer Paul Corbett. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm the planning case officer for this site, Paul Corbett. So the current proposal for consideration this evening is for the erection of one south-build, 4-bedroom detached house and detached double garage with associated vehicle access, bin and cycle stalls and landscaping. The application has been reported to the Planning Committee as it is considered to be a departure from the current development plan policy and has been formally advertised as such. As set out in the report, this particular proposal had been written up some time ago with a recommendation for approval, subject to the completion of a Section 106 after applying what is known as a tilted balance, whereby the council at the time did not have a 5-year housing land supply. However, due to unfortunate delays in finalising the Section 106 legal agreement, the application has needed to be reassessed against the now adopted Bracknell Forest Borough local plan, and the tilted balance can no longer be applied as the council is now considered to have a 5-year housing land supply. The reason it is considered to be a departure is set out within the report. So primarily the spatial strategy for the borough specifically states development in the countryside is subject to greater restrictions and the area should therefore be protected. The local plan policy LP2 requires proposals for new development should be directed towards the most sustainable locations in accordance with the borough's settlement hierarchy. The proposed development for a new dwelling relates to a site that falls outside the settlement boundary and as such is considered contrary to policies LP1, 2 and 35. However, the site is considered to comprise previously developed land as the land comprises permanent buildings and structures and is considered consistent with the exception for allowing such sites to be developed making efficient use of land as set out in the National Planning Policy Framework. In fact, a similar dwelling was allowed on part of the wider parcel of land just to the north at appeal recently, so it would be difficult to demonstrate harm given the appeal on this particular site was only refused on its scale, and given it is now reduced such that it is of a similar scale to that allowed on appeal just to the north, it would be difficult to justify a reason for refusal. It is also important to note that the current countryside policy, LP35, does not preclude residential development on this site, as it does allow for the reuse or conversion of redundant or disused buildings of permanent substantial construction. So this is a view of the site, so it's outlined in red. So you can see the location. So therefore allowing the existing outbuilding to the rear of the site to be converted to residential. So at the back of the site there is a former stable block. There's a lot of buildings that are left on the site. So that particular building would fit with the policy, and so would be in compliance with current countryside policy for its conversion. It is also entirely feasible after a period of time, the established converted residential unit would likely seek permission for its replacement, enlargement or relocation to a more centralised location, not dissimilar to what is now proposed. Therefore, what is proposed now would be very likely eventually be achieved just over a slightly longer period. What is of particular importance is the NPPF Para 84 does not say that any proposals that do not adhere to the exceptions must be refused. It says should avoid. Therefore, local authorities should be assessing each case on its own merits, and thus using a degree of planning judgment to determine cases such as this where on balance the proposal would not be considered to harm the character of the area. So this gives an illustration of the area that's deemed to be land outside settlement, so you can see the existing built up and where the site sits in the wider context. As set out in the report, the scale of development as revised is considered to be in keeping with the character of the surrounding area. The proposed design of the new house and proposed materials are considered not to detract from the neighbouring properties. The revised layout also provides an opportunity for replanting a number of trees that would help enhance the woodland setting, as well as biodiversity, which has received support from the Council's tree, landscape and biodiversity officers. So this plan is particularly important as well. So not only is the site on land outside settlement, it's also covered by tree preservation order, and that's a woodland order. The Highway Authority has no objection, subject to conditions securing a minimum of 3 parking spaces and turning to also accommodate a fire tender in an emergency, as well as a cycle store. In respect to surface water flooding, the LFA have also reviewed the proposal and raised no objection, subject to the applicant securing full details of flood resilient measures in accordance with their surface water strategy. And also the Council's Environmental Health Officer advises that the proposed dwellings are located within the 250 metre buffer zone of a former landfill. So therefore, there is a condition just to ensure that there's no risk of migrating gases from the former landfill site that was in the locality. So I'll just go through a few more illustrations. So I mentioned it was previously developed land. I managed to find an old plan which was very detailed in how extensive the site was built out. And that occurred back in 2009. This gives a better context. So for reality, this is 2013, an aerial photograph which shows the extent of previously developed land, the amount of hard and structural buildings on the site. So this is an outline in red of the site. Just to the north, there's one being allowed on appeal, which I mentioned. The applicant is also wishing to retain the building at the back of the site. This just gives a quick indication of when I visited the site in 2014, how extensively the development covered the site. So officers have considered that as part of the planning balance to permit a new dwelling on this site, the cumulative impact of retaining the outbuilding, which the applicant wants to keep to the rear there, would constitute a spread of development contrary to policy, as it would not maintain the open character of the countryside and its woodland setting, and as such should be removed upon completion of the new dwelling, which is a self-build, and is conditioned accordingly to secure its removal, and that's condition 26. Members will also be aware that they received an email direct from the applicant's agent in support of the application a few days ago, highlighting a number of points covered in the committee report before you this evening. I make specific reference to para 9.27 of the officer's report regarding the retention of the outbuilding. As I've just said, it is their intention to retain the outbuilding to live in it during the south build, which is considered reasonable. However, the applicant does not consider it fair or necessary to remove the outbuilding upon completion of the south build, as the inspector did allow the existing outbuilding to be retained on the adjacent plot to the north. Members are reminded that the site is located not only within the countryside where development is restricted, but the whole site is also covered by a tree preservation order. The outbuilding's position on the far rear boundary is considered in an unsustainable long-term position relative to the trees, and its removal would allow for the woodland to be strengthened on the back boundary in line with the proposed tree planting shown on the landscape plan, whereas the retention of this building in this location would likely just create conflict and pressure on the remaining trees long term. The other concern is that the outbuilding is currently undergoing works to make it a self-contained unit to oversee the project, and this may also give rise to resistance in its removal upon completion of the new dwelling. This would be contrary to policy LP35. So on this latest aerial photograph 24, you can see the outbuilding that the applicant wants to retain is quite densely covered by tree canopies. And this is just highlighting their plan, just showing the actual trees surrounding that outbuilding. You can see there's quite an extensive sort of clearing around it. So that's what I'm trying to say, is that the removal of that would certainly enhance that back boundary if it was replanted, or certainly enhanced. And this can be clearly seen on the landscaping plan, just down the very bottom there. You can see the building to be retained, but there's quite a lot of tree planting surrounding it. And certainly I'm of the view it would be impractical to retain the use of that building without conflicting with those new trees. So it's just a bit more detail of the site. You can see the one that was allowed on appeal to the north, and that's the proposed self-built dwelling, and you can see the previous footprint of the one that was dismissed at appeal, and also the retained outbuilding to the rear boundary. some proposed elevations. It's near identical to the one that was allowed on appeal to the north. Floor plans and the proposed detached garage. This is the existing outbuilding. As you can see, it's of a fair substantial size. On that back boundary, it's 18.7 metres in length by approximately 5 metres in depth. So this is just another illustration I put together just to highlight the star down the bottom there is the position of that outbuilding, and comparing and contrasting it to the one allowed on appeal next door. There's certainly, the outbuilding's not so far set back in the site, so it would retain a fairly substantial area of trees. So this is just the street scene view. So the Pine Acres would serve as the entrance, and the site would just, the access would be shared with Pine Acres and this new site. So this gives another flavour of the surrounding gated entrances off the end of Birch Lane. So you can see the various properties there, fairly substantial properties, but also fairly well included with a tree covering. Officers are therefore recommending that the outbuilding is removed, and that is secured by condition 26. Whilst it is acknowledged that condition 5 does remove permitted development rights for outbuildings under Class E, this does not mean no outbuildings would ever be allowed. It simply means the LPA has control over any additional buildings that may be sought. This is considered reasonable given the site is located outside the settlement where development is restricted, but also in the interest of safeguarding the longevity of the woodland trees that are protected. In this specific case, it is not considered that this proposal for a dwelling, for a single dwelling as a south build between similar dwellings on what is considered to be of a similar proportion site would result in a significant material change to the character of the area, or set a precedent for further development which would materially change the area's character or undermine the countryside policy. Therefore, a planning judgment should prevail in this particular case. As set out under para 10 of the report, that whilst this particular proposal results in a technical departure from the development plan due to its location outside settlement, the specific material circumstances and merits associated with this proposal are considered on balance not to compromise the integrity of the settlement boundary or damage the character or appearance of the surrounding countryside to warrant a refusal against Countryside Policy LP 35. Therefore, the proposal is recommended for approval set out in section 11 of the report, subject to a number of conditions and the completion of a section 106 agreement securing the SPA mitigation for this one new dwelling. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we have questions for the officer, please? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make sure I correctly understand this situation with regards to the outbuilding. So the desire to retain the outbuilding is not included within the planning application. Am I correct? And hence we are able to condition its removal.
Yes, it's not in the it's not in the specifically mentioned in the description through you, Chair. And there is a condition, as you rightly point out, asking for its removal.
Thank you, that's clear.
Thank you. More questions? No? Anyone online got a question? Is Councillor Barnard still there? Or who else?
Yes, I am. Yes.
Would you like to ask anybody, any of Any questions of the officer?
No,
Sorry.
I'm fine. I've been listening to the presentation. I reserve till we debate.
Thank you. Nobody else? Oh, Councillor Collins.
Can you tell me what surface materials are in front of the outbuilding? Is it a driveway? Gravel? I'm just wondering what the impact of that is on the surrounding trees.
We do have a condition requiring details of removal of materials, but from my understanding, the materials that were on site were probably bought on back in 2009, so quite some time ago, and the trees seem to have survived. But as part of the planting of trees, obviously that hard standing would have to be removed to give them any chance of survival.
And I just add a follow on then. They've got a proposed landscaping plan. Does it encroach on the outbuilding, or have they made sure it's still retaining the outbuilding and access to it?
As you can see by that latest updated landscaping plan, it doesn't indicate any route to that outbuilding.
Thank you. Having trouble with that one. That's great. Any other questions? No? We seem to have run out of questions. It's a nice, clear report. Thank you. So falls to me to move the recommendation on page 152 of the report. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, Councillor Collins.
Thank you. Would anybody like to speak, comment? Otherwise, say anything. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Can I just say it's been a well thought out report for which we're all very grateful. Thanks for all that work that's gone into it.
Thank you, I absolutely agree, yeah. Any other comments? No? Okay. Oh, is there somebody online? No? No. Okay, time to take a vote. All those in favour of the recommendation, please.
That's unanimous, so it's carried.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So our final item this evening is item number 10, Meadow End 273 High Street. It's page 163 of your report. Who's presenting? This is Dexter Matthews. Yep. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Hello again. This application is a Section 73 application seeking permission for the addition of roof lights to the existing bungalow, internal alterations and the addition of render to the existing dwelling. The application site comprises of a recently subdivided plot with 2 chalet bungalows. Objections were received from 1 and 2 Hylas House and By House to the south. The application has been referred to the Planning Committee by Councillor Tina Mackenzie Boyle due to concerns of overlooking and loss of privacy. Here we can see the recent planning history of the site. Planning permission was granted in 2022 for a new residential dwelling and the subdivision of the plot. During construction, there have been deviations from the approved plans, and as such, this application seeks to regulise these changes and assess any additional harm. The main areas of concern were the loss of privacy and overlooking to the neighbouring dwellings, and whether the addition of render would adversely impact the character of the surrounding area. Here we will assess the impact on the neighbouring dwellings to the south. The roof lights are to serve an ensuite to bedroom number 2 and a shared bathroom at the top of the landing. The roof lights at the closest point to 1 and 2 Hylas House would be around 11.7 metres and 10.6 metres, and approximately 10.5 metres from the first floor rear elevation of By House. The windows as installed are clear glass and openable. Under permitted development rights, Class C requires windows in a side elevation to be obscure glazed and non-opening unless the parts of the window which can be opened are more than 1.7 metres above the floor in the room in which the window is installed. As the windows are more than 1.7 metres above the floor level, it is of the officer's view that it would be unreasonable to request the windows to be obscure glazed. Because of their height above floor level, they do not result in unacceptable overlooking and loss of privacy to adjoining neighbours, as can be seen in the following photos. A site visit confirmed that the windows are approximately 1.8 metres above floor level. When standing in the bedroom and looking out at the roof light, you can just see the top of Hylas House here. By House objected on the grounds that the proposed windows would result in a loss of privacy and direct overlooking. However, there is an existing relationship from the existing side-facing window, as can be seen in the photographs. Whilst I can sympathise with the neighbours for feeling as though they're being overlooked, as the bathrooms are non-habitable rooms, they will have limited use, and in combination with the windows being installed at a high level, it is not considered that the windows would result in an unacceptable harm to neighbours in terms of direct overlooking or loss of privacy. As such, a reason for refusal could not be sustained on these grounds. The proposal also seeks to change the external finish from red brick to wheaten render. The existing dwelling already had elements of render applied to its gables and would not be a new material. There are a number of buildings bounding the site that are finished to render or have been painted, as can be seen in the photos. As such, the addition of render is not considered to adversely affect the character and appearance of the surrounding area. In conclusion, the scheme is considered to accord with the relevant policies of the local plan, the Design SPD and the MPPF. The proposal was therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out in section 11 of the committee report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions for the officer, please? No questions? I'm sorry, we can't. Councillor Virgo.
Could I just clarify, confusing as this is, there is a problem over the height of this window. Is that correct?
Can you clarify what I mean by a problem
Well,
with the
isn't
height?
there not enforcement action that will have to be taken? Is that not right?
Through you, Chair, could I answer that? The position with it is that this application has been put in order to regularise the situation. The officer will correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that the roof lights were put in and they weren't shown on the original application. So the application in front of you today is to regularise the situation. That is the potential enforcement action. The issue with the windows is that because they're high level windows, it's not considered that it would be reasonable to impose a condition requiring them to be obscurely glazed, because that wouldn't be reasonably necessary to make the planning application acceptable. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. You also mentioned about permitted development rules for windows in a similar position. I just wondered if we could get some clarification on why this isn't considered permitted development. I appreciate it's a deviation from the approved plans, but obviously if the approved plans have been delivered, then would the applicant have been able to put windows of the same type in the same location under permitted development?
For them to be permitted development, in this current location, current height, all that would be required is them to be obscure glazed, but they'd still be allowed to be openable. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, Councillor Mackenzie-Bourne.
Thank you, Dexter, for that. Why don't they just put obscure glass in? I mean, it's to me, it's a glimpse of the blindingly obvious.
Through you, Chair, if they put obscure glass in, it would be permitted development. The purpose of the planning application is to seek permission for the windows as they have been inserted where they're not obscurely glazed.
Okay, so just Klutz here. So we've got to go through all of this in order to say those windows shouldn't have been there. If they are going to be there, we have to go through another application to make them obscure glass. Is that right? Am I going off piste here? I am. Somebody there is shaking their head. Well, not being an officer and knowing all the ins and outs. That's just a person here who looks at this. I don't understand where we are then.
With you there.
Do you understand this, Councillor Virgo?
Shall we
frankly,
allow the Assistant Director to speak?
Through you, Chair. Hopefully I'll answer your question, but if the windows that had been inserted had been obscurely glazed, they would have been permitted development, and so no potential enforcement action would have been considered, and there would have been no application. The purpose of the application is to regularise the existing position on site. So as the windows have been inserted, they're not obscurely glazed, and it's for that reason that they're not permitted development, and that's why this application is required.
You got it. You've got it, have you?
Do you,
can you please leave me then?
Do you have another question?
I've just about got it.
Councillor Mackenzie-Bourne, do you have another
really
question?
Quite,
No.
yes, the question is, I'm just not getting it. I really am not getting it. I mean, for heaven's sake, I mean, the development by our developers, the applicants, they must be told, they must be instructed that what they've planned, they have to put in. And they just can't come back with Section 73. Otherwise, it's a new application. Is that what we're saying? Anyway, just put some obscure glass in and we're done.
So what happens if we refuse? What happens if we refuse this? So the householder could just put obscure glass in and it would be all right?
Through you, Chair, yes, certainly if they obscurely glaze the windows, they would be permitted development, but officers' advice would be if the application was refused on grounds of overlooking and the applicant appealed, that there would be a high likelihood that the appeal would be allowed.
We're not allowed. So, yes, please.
This seems absolute madness to me, I must say. I know that I should be asking questions, but let's cut to the chase here. The fact is, at the end of the day, there's been lots of problems with overlooking. That's fine. There could be. So it's very simple. I would like to suggest an amendment. I'll do this in the debate, if you like, but that will stop all this, and if members would accept this amendment, end of story.
Yep. Shall we go forward on that basis?
Sorry, Chair. you have to proceed with the application that's before you. Yeah. So you need to move that motion first. Mm-hmm. If someone wants to make an amendment to that motion, they then need to make that amendment, and then that gets voted on. But at the moment, you need to move the application as it is.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to try and pitch this question to try and just make sure I'm clear on exactly the conversation. Am I correct in the understanding that this is not permitted development because it's not obscure glazing? The question essentially before us this evening is, do we accept windows without obscure glazing in that position, to which my understanding is the officer's argument is that based on the height of the windows, it would not be reasonable to require that to be obscured, and therefore, although that's not permitted development, they're suggesting we should accept that. Is that view correct?
Through you, Chair, yes, that is correct.
Time for debate, I think. We've asked plenty of questions. So it falls to me to move the recommendation on page 172. Comments or... Oh yes, a second, please.
I will second Councillor Collins.
Thank you very much. So now, comments or move, or yes, Councillor Virgo.
To go on with my conversation, I've got an amendment to this, Madam Chair. Do you want me to read this out? Or can we put it on screen? I think Dexter did it for me.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Sorry, Chair. The procedure is that the motion has been moved, so you debate the motion. If after that debate, Councillor Virgo wants to make an amendment, then that amendment can be made, but it has to be seconded, and then you debate that. So you need to have a debate about the motion that's before you at the moment.
Oh, okay.
First.
Right. But we don't take a vote yet. No. Right. Just let's have some comments on the original motion then, please. Councillor Virgo, do you want to start?
Well, it's all been said in this hall 50 times, I think. It seems madness to me that, you know, if people complain about it and we have a problem with it, for goodness sake, let's just say it has to be obscure glass. So that's the end of it. And if we do this as an amendment, it's easy. It will save all the problem later of officers' time looking at it, enforcement, etc. I completely agree that it could be construed that someone could look through it. It's highly unlikely, but if the neighbours feel that is so, there's always going to be a matter of conflict. And this doesn't have to be conflict if we put obscure glass in. We've done it 1,000 times in this hall, 1,000 times, because I've been here 1,000 times. I can tell you that. That's all I've got to say.
Let's not exaggerate, Councillor Virgo. Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. There's been an uncharacteristic degree of consensus in the chamber tonight. I think we've voted unanimously on everything so far. Unfortunately, I'm inclined to break that at this point. I very much take the points that Councillor Virgo has raised and the reasons that he's given for the amendment that I'm sure we will debate shortly. But I think that the critical test here has got to be, you know, these windows are in place, they're not currently obscure glazed, and would it therefore, you know, at this position be reasonable to ask them to be? My concern is, you know, the officer's advice is quite clear that they don't believe it would be reasonable. I likewise, whilst I do consider obscure glazing to be a betterment of the situation, I'm not convinced that it would be reasonable to request that at this point, given the height of the windows and the evidence we've seen with regards to how that minimises overlooking. And indeed, we've had many applications previously where we've had similar windows, and you know that 1.7 metre height is the critical dimension that's always the test. So my view at this point is I absolutely do agree that obscure glazing would be a betterment, but I don't feel there's actually a valid basis for the committee to add that as a condition tonight, in my view.
Thank you.
Can I just also add, in terms of what, if a amendment is proposed which asks for obscure glass for the clear glass to be replaced with obscure glass, then it just becomes permitted development. It's not actually dealing with the application before you. It changes the application to permitted development, and that's something they can do anyway. But what really needs to be considered is the application before you. If members feel that it should be obscure glass, then it needs to be refused rather than amended to say that it's obscure rather than, sorry, I just want to have a chat. I'm not convinced that this is the appropriate approach to an application that's before us, to have an amendment that then turns it into permitted development. So can I just have a minute with the Assistant Director to work out what's the best way to deal with this? Chair, through you, having discussed it with the Assistant Director for Planning and officers, we think the best approach here is for the amendment that Councillor Virgo is proposing, and then the applicant has a choice to appeal that condition. We think there are possibilities of appeals and challenges, but we feel that's the best approach.
Thank you very much for all that. Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
I thank you for that consideration. That makes the probability of the residents having a better life. Now, we've got to remember, we have on our report, Article 8, everyone has the right to respect of his private and family life, his home. And if that is opaque glass, then we are within those rights. So thank you for that.
Well spotted, thank you. Okay, do we have any other comments on the original? No, I think we've done that. So we're now considering the amendment proposed. Would you like to...
Do you want me to read this out, actually? Or Dexter, have you got this on?
Dexter's got it, hasn't
Oh, you got it on, yeah. Great. Okay. Thanks.
No, apparently not. Does it need to be proposed and seconded before it works? And then Okay, yeah, lovely, okay.
Do you want me to read this?
Yes, please.
Oh,
that'd
sorry,
Be great. No, that would be good if you
Okay,
would. Oh, it's all gone blank.
Members, this is what, this has been in connection with Dexter on this, so let me read the amendment. The 2 roof lights in the south-facing roof slope of the existing dwelling thereby permitted shall not be glazed at any other time other than with a minimum of Pilkington Level 3 obscure glass brackets or equivalent end brackets. The proposed works will be completed within 2 months from the date of the granted planning permission, full stop. The reason we put is to prevent the overlooking of neighbouring properties, relevant policies, Bracknell Forest Local Plan, LP 50. That's
Thank you. Would you like to propose?
it. I'd like to propose that, please, Chair.
And do you have a seconder? Councillor Mackenzie Boyle. Thank you. So, have we done enough talking? Would you like to make any more comments? Councillor Smith, please.
Chair, can I ask, are we able to get officer advice in relation to the proposed amendment? I know that's outside of the normal order, but this is obviously a significant change to the what's in the officer's report.
Assistant Director, thanks.
Through you, Chair. Yes, the officer's advice is, as set out in the committee report, is that such a condition is not reasonably necessary to make the development acceptable in planning terms, and that advice stands. We would advise that obviously there is a right of appeal against a condition which the applicant might choose to exercise. There's also other potential possibilities of challenge, but they're probably unlikely in this instance. So there is that right of appeal, but our advice would be that it's not reasonably necessary.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. If I may speak to the amendment then, and I thank the Assistant Director for preempting the question I was going to ask. Again, I think I'll return to the points I made in the main debate. My concern with this is the question of whether or not it is reasonable for us to ask this of the applicant at this point, considering the height of the window is above the 1.7 metres, which in itself generally is considered to mitigate the risk of overlooking. My view, therefore, at this point is that there would be considerable risk associated with passing this amendment. I would consider it quite likely that the applicant may appeal that, and certainly my perspective is I'm not sure how we would defend that on appeal, given the very clear advice from the officers that it's not reasonably necessary. So I'm afraid, unfortunately, I can't support this amendment.
Councillor Barnard, please.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman. If I was in the council chamber this evening on this one, I would be supporting the amendment that's been put forward by members. I think it has been carefully thought through, and a lot of these things are subjective. There are some numbers there, and Councillor Smith, I recognise that there are some numbers there, but actually, at the end of the day, the perception from those which feel they're being overlooked by this are such that it can only actually be resolved, I would suspect, to their satisfaction with the use of obscure glass. I've often felt that the risk of appeal, is a material consideration to be thought about. But in this case, I'm pleased to see that colleagues in the chamber have moved an amendment which seeks to actually, I think, uphold the rights of privacy for those residents already extant with existing development in the locality of this development.
Thank you. Any other comments? Would you like to comment, Councillor Collins?
I suppose I'm concerned that we're setting a precedent then for other applications, and that everybody will claim that in similar circumstances, neighbours will claim that they are overlooked. And will this influence future decisions. I don't know.
Councillor Mackenzie Boyle.
Then, as a lessons learned, Deputy Chair, they'd put opaque glass in, wouldn't they?
Can
Could I just round up by saying everything must be taken on the merits. The Deputy Chair's raised a point, but everything, as we've been told many times in this building, we look at the application on its merits. And so I don't think you should worry about precedents. It depends on the circumstances. And I would just like to add, I think this is a sensible decision to do. Of course, people have the right of appeal. Would you do the right of appeal when the house is standing there? I don't think so. So anyway, it stands. Let's see the vote.
So the vote. All those in favour of the amendment, please.
That's 6 in favour, Chair.
Those against?
That's 1 against.
Abstention?
1 abstention. So the amendment is carried and is added to the motion.
Thank you. And that's it. Could you just stay quiet till we're offline? Thank you so much for all that, officers and members.